Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR Official 24 channel. Mariah's mistake clue IDs Dom's kidnapper. Mariah Copeland has taken Dominic Newman Abbott Winter's chancellor. She is going out of town. Mariah Copeland leaves behind a big clue. This clue could show that Mariah Copeland is the one who kidnapped Dominic Newman Abbott Winter's chancellor. We have to keep reading to see what happens next in the CBS soap opera. Ian Ward's pressure. Let us start with Mariah Copeland's problems. Mariah Copeland almost killed a man with her hands. Mariah Copeland did this.
It was a really bad thing.
Mariah Copeland has some issues, and we are going to see what happens with Mariah Copeland next. The man is alive. Then something changed. Mariah started to stay from Tessa Porter and Aria Porter Copeland. She did this after what happened. Then Mariah went to a clinic to get help with her mind. But she did not get better, she got worse. Now Mariah sees things that are not there like Ian, and she does what these things tell her to do. Mariah Copeland did something bad. When Devin Winters and Abby Winters were not paying attention, Mariah did something. She took Dominic, put him in her car. Then she drove away with him. The young and the restless fans saw Dominic asleep in the seat as Mariah calmly got on the freeway. Dominic should not be scared of Mariah because she is still very close to the family. When Mariah is not around, Devin and Abby do not think about her. So they will not think that she is involved away. Dominic Newman Abbott Winter's chancellor is missing now. Since Dominic is missing, Devin and Abby think that their son Dominic is just playing a game of hide and seek. They look everywhere for the boy, but they just can't find him. So they search the house and the whole estate. There is a clip that shows Abby talking to Devin. She says nobody has seen Dom for hours, and it is getting dark. Abby is really scared. Devin looks like he is frozen with fear. They will get some help from Detective Burrow. One big clue was found. This clue was shown on Tuesday, January 27, 2026. The little boy is still. They need to find him. Detective Burrow will help them find the boy Dom. As Devin and Abby ran upstairs to look for Dominic, the camera zoomed out. Down, in the living room, Mariah's scarf was sitting on a chair. Mariah forgot her scarf, which is pretty weird. When Devin and Abby still do not find Dominic, they might see the scarf. They might not know it belongs to Mariah though. There are people who would know that scarf like Tessa and Sharon Newman. They would probably recognize Mariah's scarf away. It also might have been an unconscious effort on Mariah's part to scream out for help. Maybe deep inside, she wants to get caught to end the Ian Ward madness. Dominic had tried to convince her to run and leave the chaos of her past behind, but Mariah's heart had been a battleground of regret and desperation, each beat thudding painfully in her chest as she realized that the life she had built, the secrets she had tried to bury, and the lies she had whispered in her own defense were all catching up to her at once. And when Ian Ward emerged from the shadows, his eyes cold and unyielding, filled with the kind of vengeance that only someone who had been betrayed in every way imaginable could harbor, Mariah knew instantly that there was no turning back, that the choices she had made, running with Dominic, lying to her family, trying to protect the people she loved while simultaneously deceiving them, had led her to this very moment where the air was thick with tension, the faint smell of gunpowder mingling with the bitter tang of fear, and Dominic, ever the protector, reached out, his hands shaking, his voice breaking as he pleaded with her to stay calm, to reason with Ian, to find a way out that didn't end with blood. But Mariah's eyes, wide and filled with sorrow, met his, and she shook her head, the tears streaming down her face reflecting the streetlights like tiny fractured mirrors of the life she had imagined for herself, a life where love could conquer all, where mistakes could be forgiven, but in reality, forgiveness seemed distant and almost unattainable, because Ian Ward wasn't a man who offered mercy. He was a storm, a reckoning, a walking embodiment of all the pain Mariah had caused, and as he raised the gun, the metallic glint catching the light in a way that made her flinch, she thought of her family, of Tessa, of her friends who had always believed in her even when she didn't believe it herself, and a scream rose in her throat, not just of fear but of regret, a piercing, gut-wrenching acknowledgement that perhaps if she had been braver, if she had owned up to her mistakes sooner, this horrifying fate might have been avoided, yet in the split second that she considered running, Ian fired, the shot tearing through the night like a jagged lightning bolt, and Mariah's body jerked violently, the impact knocking the air from her lungs, her vision blurring, the faces of Dominic and those she loved flickering in front of her like fragments of a dream that was cruelly being shattered, and as she stumbled backward, the warmth of the blood blossoming across her shirt, she realized with a painful clarity that life was mercilessly fragile and that no amount of running, no secret kept, no lie told, could shield her from the consequences of choices made in desperation and fear, and Dominic's cry of anguish filled the alley, echoing off the walls, a sound so raw, so pure in its heartbreak, that even the cold, calculating Ian Ward seemed momentarily unsettled, though only for a heartbeat, before the storm in his eyes returned, confirming that his wrath was far from sated, that Mariah's fate had been sealed the moment she crossed paths with him in this deadly game of deception and power, and as she collapsed into Dominic's arms, her last thoughts were a chaotic jumble of, "I'm sorry, I tried, I love you," punctuated by flashes of memories, happy ones, fleeting ones, precious fragments of the life she had hoped to preserve, and the cruel irony that the very act meant to save herself and Dominic, fleeing together to escape the mounting dangers, had instead led her to this tragic, irreversible end, and in those final, agonizing moments, time seemed to stretch and warp, the sounds of the city fading into a muted echo, leaving only the pounding of her own heart, the warmth of Dominic's hands desperately clutching her, and the terrifying, inescapable realization that her story, once full of hope, love, and redemption, was now ending not with a reunion, not with forgiveness, but with the cold, unrelenting grip of death, leaving everyone who knew her stunned, devastated, and struggling to reconcile the vibrant, passionate, flawed woman they had loved with a tragic figure lying lifeless in the alley, while Ian Ward melted back into the shadows, leaving behind only fear, chaos, and the haunting knowledge that Genoa City would never be the same, that Mariah's choices, her secrets, her regrets, and her final flight with Dominic had collided into an explosive tragedy that would reverberate through every family, every friendship, every corner of the city for months, years, perhaps forever, as whispers of why and what could have been filled the minds of those left behind, and in the midst of it all, Dominic cradled Mariah, rocking her, whispering desperate promises that she would not leave him, that somehow, someway, there would be a miracle, even as the life slowly drained from her, leaving her body cold, a stark, heartbreaking contrast to the warmth and vitality she had carried even through her darkest mistakes, and as he finally realized the depth of her departure, the finality of it, he screamed into the night, a raw, soul-shaking wail that seemed to shake the very foundations of Genoa City itself, while the rest of the world carried on oblivious, and Mariah's absence was immediately felt, an aching void that no amount of grief could fill, leaving everyone to ponder not just the violence that ended her life, but the cascading series of decisions, fears, and desperate acts that had brought a woman full of love, mistakes, and fierce loyalty to this heartbreaking, shocking, and utterly tragic finale. Dominic's hands shook violently as he held Mariah's limp body, unbelief mingling with the raw, undressed terror that clawed at his casket, every beat pounding like a barrel of brewing doom, and indeed as he screamed her name, his voice cracking with grief, he couldn't help but renewal every moment that had led to this moment, every stolen regard, every rumored concession, every plan to flee together in a hopeless shot to escape the wrath of Ian Ward, whose presence in Genoa City had always been like a shadow over their lives, silent, brewing, calculating, and now that shadow had come armament, a gun, a precursor of unrecoverable tragedy, and as Dominic pressed against Mariah, gashes barring down his face, his mind contended through recollections of happier times, times when horse-laugh had filled the apartments of her apartment, when secrets had sounded trivial, when love had felt like it could conquer indeed the darkest fears, and yet all of it had atrophied, shattered by treason, despair, and the violent hand of fate that had chosen this alley, This night, this alternate to rip her down from him, and the echoes of her final breath sounded to hang in the air, a haunting memorial of mortality and the fragility of life, as he rocked her back and forth, murmuring frantic, broken pledges. "You're not leaving me, you CA, and leave me, we'll figure this out, I love you." Indeed, as his fritters probed for a palpitation that refused to respond, and the unforeseen, ruinous consummation that she was gone burned a whirlpool of grief, rage, and unbelief, leaving Dominic firmed in an agony too cruel to be real. And also the enchantresses began, distant at first, a wailing memorial that help might arrive too late, and yet indeed as police lights flitted in the distance, casting blue and red murk across the walls of the alley, Dominic refused to release her. Unintentional to let the world reclaim her from his grasp, unintentional to let her die without knowing the depth of his love and the suffocating weight of his remorse, because in that moment, the world had narrowed to a single, unsupportable verity: Mariah was gone, and Genoa City would no way ever be the same. Meanwhile, news of the firing gurgled through the megacity like campfire, the whispers and gasps of shocked neighbors, musketeers, and families spreading faster than anyone could comprehend, and at crimson lights, Tessa collapsed into Abby's arms, her body shaking uncontrollably as she reported the terrible events, each word breaking her farther, each memory of Mariah's smile, her horse laugh, her unvarying love, now intertwined with the image of her breathless body, lying cold in Dominic's arms, and Abby, ever the voice of sense and compassion, tried to soothe her, but indeed she felt the crushing weight of loss, the way tragedy sounded to access every corner of Genoa City, leaving no bone untouched. And the Newman family, hearing the news through frantic calls and tearful textbooks, replied with their own storm of emotion, Victor's face hardening with wrathfulness and unbelief, Nikki's hands flying to her mouth in horror, and indeed Faith, youthful yet perceptive, seeing the graveness of what had happened, felt a hole open in her stomach, the air heavy with shock and despair, because Mariah had been further than a friend, further than a son to some, further than a family, further than a confidant, and now she was gone, taken in a moment by the cruel, grim hands of Ian Ward, whose motives, though embedded in revenge and preoccupation, sounded nearly incomprehensible in their cold computation, and the megacity itself sounded to mourn, the thoroughfares quieter, the lights dimmer, as if the macrocosm had conceded the enormity of the loss. Back in the alley, Dominic's anguish turned to rage. Every muscle in his body curled with fury, and he rose, still clinging Mariah, his eyes surveying for Ian Ward, who had dissolved like a phantom, leaving only destruction before, and Dominic's mind came a storm of revenge, grief, and helplessness, conniving in fractions how he could ever defy Ian, how he could conceivably bring justice to a world that had taken Mariah so violently from him. But as the reality of the situation set in, the enormity of the legal and emotional maze ahead, he realized there were no easy results, no simple vengeance, only the raw, eating pang of loss, and in that pain, Dominic's studies flitted to Mariah's regrets, the moments she had confessed her miscalculations, her fears of hurting those she loved, and the consummation that her flight with him had been both an act of love and despair, an attempt to shield them both from the consequences of the chaos swirling around them, now rendered tragically questionable because fate, cruel and unyielding, had interdicted them in the form of a projectile that shattered not only Mariah's life, but the fragile sense of safety and hope they had cleaved to. Contemporaneously, Tessa, scuffling with the horror, tried to call Detective Harrison, her voice pulsing as she bared the details she had heard from substantiations, her mind floundering to comprehend that Mariah, so vibrant, so full of life, could be taken in such an unforeseen, violent manner, and the police arrived moments laterally, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, hands ready, radios creaking with critical communication, but indeed as they approached, Dominic refused to let go of Mariah's body, refusing to accept the data, refusing to yield to the futurity that death demanded, and the investigators worked snappily, assessing the scene, noting the line, the presence of shell coverings, the signs of struggle, and the murk left by Ian Ward's escape, establishing every agonizing detail, while Dominic, drenched in grief, alternated between wailing and paralyzing silence. The air around him charged with the electricity of anguish and rage, and indeed as paramedics arrived, their trained faces set with professional detachment, the helplessness in the face of true tragedy was palpable, and they could do nothing but confirm what Dominic formerly knew: Mariah was gone. In the fate, Genoa City came a megacity of whispers, of shock, of implacable mourning, each character responding in their own shattered way, the Newmans trying to shield themselves and each other from despair, while also scuffling with wrathfulness toward Ian Ward, Nick furious that someone had dared to commit similar violence in their megacity. Sharon floundering with the haunting memorial that indeed the people she loved most were vulnerable to the cruel twists of fate, and indeed Victor, calculating, always ready to manipulate circumstances to his advantage, felt the sting of helplessness, a rare, bitter taste he despised, because no quantum of wealth, influence, or cunning could undo the fact that Mariah had been ripped from their lives, leaving behind a void filled with questions, reservations, and the eating need for answers, and throughout the megacity, musketeers, neighbors, and families suchlike scuffled with the consequences of Mariah's final choices: her flight with Dominic, her attempts to right past wrongs, and the heart-wrenching consummation that indeed love, courage, and fidelity could shield someone from the brutality of reality. And as Dominic eventually allowed himself to be pulled down from the scene, her body now in the care of medical labor force, his mind was a battleground of grief, rage, and despair, every step heavy, every breath labored. And in the quiet moments when he was alone, he rumored justifications to Mariah, contended with the macrocosm to bring her back, wondered audibly why fate had been so cruel, and promised, in a choked voice, that Ian Ward would answer for this, though indeed as he swore revenge, he knew that no discipline, no vengeance, no justice could ever truly restore what had been lost, because Mariah's light, her love, her horse laugh, her veritably substance, had been extinguished, and Genoa City, ever scarred by the event, would carry the memory of her woeful death in every corner, every road, every twinkle of those who had known and loved her. Indeed, as the disquisition into Ian Ward's conduct unfolded, the megacity's palpitation remained tense, every shadow suspected, every foreigner eyed with dubitation. And Dominic, torn between the desire for vengeance and the unsupportable weight of mourning, plotted to find a balance between justice and his own twisting grief, while Tessa, Abby, and the rest of Mariah's circle cleaved to recollections, photos, and the fractions of exchanges that now felt sorrowfully precious, replaying each smile, each participated secret, each moment of tender-heartedness, as if doing so could ever defy the irrevocable verity of her death. And in those nights, when the megacity slept, Dominic would lie awake, visited by the echoes of her final words, the image of the alley, the metallic scent of blood, and the cruel memorial that choices, indeed made with love, could collide with violence and revenge in ways no bone could prognosticate, leaving hearts shattered, families broken, and a megacity forced to defy its own fragility, its own vulnerability, and the dark, changeable nature of mortal preoccupation, rapacity, and wrath. And in the months that followed, every regard at a shadowed corner, every unanticipated knock, every distant temptress brought Dominic back to that night, to that alley, to the moment that changed everything. And the whispers of Mariah's life, her miscalculations, her love, and her regrets came a megacity-wide narrative of tragedy, heroism, and the unsupportable weight of what it meant to lose someone so vital, so defective, so hugely irreplaceable. And through it all, the name Ian Ward came synonymous with destruction, a memorial that one person's rage could strike lives, shatter families, and leave scars that would no way completely heal, while Dominic, adhering to the memory of Mariah, pledged that her death would not be in vain, that the megacity would flash back her, recognize her, and that ever, indeed through the pain, life would demand they carry forward, Indeed, if ever marked by the night when Mariah was shot dead, when stopgaps sounded misplaced, and when the veritably heart of Genoa City wept in accord.